when someone doesn't make sense to me, it's quite intriguing to me. I almost have to figure it out.
I'm curious, and maybe you already explained this, but maybe again, why is it important for the character to be seen by the writer and vice versa? Why is it, what was powerful about having these different seat changes?
So, I don't know if you have felt anything, but I think for me, it's mostly about, if you mean being seen, like when the writer imagines the character in their mind, it's very useful because then you can take whatever you've seen and put it on the page. But also it's to be seen and connected is kind of important because I think it's got to do with that non-judgment thing I was talking about, where you don't judge your characters. If you can see them, and it's difficult because sometimes you see someone and you're like, oh my gosh, I mean, I can think of some people who I'm just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing on that stage? you know, it's like this, not an actor, but what are you, like, just like if you see someone in life and you don't like them, but you can't write from that perspective. You've got to be able to see them. That's the importance of the chair, I think.
It's a very good question, actually. I would think also perhaps it's a way to ground the character. If you can imagine them sitting here right next to you in this chair, it's not so much in this kind of imagined world that's lofty and
yeah, exactly.
in
it's
that
not
way.
cerebral.
Like literally, I've never thought whether we'd be friends or not, but
Yeah.
I think we would be. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
something I would
Yeah,
never
yeah.
have considered before. And I am writing a character that is flawed, but ultimately that I like. And
Yeah.
it's good to know, I guess, and
Yeah.
obviously depends on the character, what you want to infuse there. But
Exactly, yeah.
Is that something you've done previously in your writing, Angelique, where you tried to imagine the character in your world if you saw them at a coffee shop or at an acting class?
no, but I really should start to do that. I haven't done that, no. I mean, I do definitely have very clear visualizations of my characters, the environments they're in. You know, Matthew can verify that I do like detail. I try not to go overboard, but I think it would be very useful, yeah, to see how they would interface with my environment, what they would make. Yeah, again, to make them, especially in this case, since it's a contemporary story, it would be apt, you know, maybe if they were from a different century. That would be a whole other thing, but
I think there's something about, see, Ange does this naturally because she's an actress, and this is the whole, or actor, and this is the whole thing, is that it's this thing that I think I may have started this conversation with. There's something very difficult to teach, maybe I didn't talk about this, which is the empathy that you have as an actor to imagine yourself into someone else's shoes. And Ange does this naturally because she's an actress. And it's like, and when you do that, it's difficult to imagine yourself into someone else's shoes, into this vacuum space where there's actually not a real world going on. You know, it's a bit about embodying and grounding the character and the person. And I think some actors can just do that. And some writers struggle with it, I think. And yeah, that's the point of this whole thing, is to be able to. And so I think Ange kind of probably, even though she hasn't done this exercise in this, or hasn't imagined her characters in everyday life, the world she's created is still real enough because you know how to do it as an actor. Yeah.
And I think also naturally I do really enjoy understanding the human psyche. That's probably why I'm drawn to acting. So the fact that I'm naturally someone who, I think I have quite good intuition when it comes to people, and then on top of that, when someone doesn't make sense to me, it's quite intriguing to me. I almost have to figure it out. And in that way, then, if you can translate that into your writing, I think it's so good for then making the motivations of the entire story so strong, because it's one thing to have a great idea and to have, you know, some twists and turns and reveals, you know, but ultimately I'm always going back to, would the character do this? Or if we need the character to get from A to B, that's not going to work. We have to find a different way, because that is not true to what their wants and needs are. And they kind of go to behavior and so on. But it's interesting, especially like you say, trying to understand all the characters, because I think that's actually one of the benefits of getting a little bit older in life, is you encounter more types, and you see more patterns, and you can really, you get a much better grasp on the human race. I mean, it's a work in progress, right? Forever. But it helps you to again ground and motivate all the characters in all their glory, because I think it can be very dangerous to oversimplify a character. Yeah.
And I wanted to pick up on one quick thing Ange said, which was that the thing about getting a character from here to here, right? And that motivation. This is the thing, is an actor, like as a writer, we just make them go from there to there because we want them to. And it's like, they don't want to. They're like, well, why? I don't want to go there. And then it's good to be open to that and listen to it. And like, I know some writers I've worked with are the writers who can like hear their characters in their head and like have conversations with them and stuff. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Because that's actually when they're really alive. It's like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm like, but I want you to do that. Well, then give me some motivation or something that's going to make me go and do this thing that you, the writer, want me to do. And this is where I think the two chairs is interesting, because it's like the writer is a person, the character is a person. And actually in a real world, the character is has its own autonomy as much as you do as the writer. And I think very often because often writers are very plot driven, they make the characters do things. And then the characters are like, well, why am I going to do this? And then the writer's, well, so the movie can happen. And the character's like, oh, okay. And then they do it. But it's like, it results in stories that you're watching it and you're like, I'm not sure they would do that, right?
Yeah, and it's funny, the audience watches it and often wouldn't know why they don't like a story, why they think a movie's bad. And it really comes down to literally the page, the actor on the day. And I've been in that position for sure, where I'd have to literally help them rewrite or make suggestions for at least my character's entire kind of storyline for it to really work. And you just kind of, it's the path of least resistance to do something that doesn't exactly necessarily fit perfectly. And that's what, I think not sometimes, it always doesn't sit with the receiver, with that authenticity. Yeah. Authenticity is a big one. That's actually what it all comes down to.
I think that's the key, authenticity.
And then that relates to relatability. And then you actually can take people on a journey, with the lead and all the other characters. But if they're not emotionally, that's what I always say at least. I enjoy movies where I can be invested. And it doesn't have to be a drama or anything intense. It can be silly, but if I don't care about the character, the lead character especially, I feel like what's the point? So your job is to make them care about them, not by making them perfect, but
making them real and authentic.
Making them real.
Which is what this is about.
Exactly.
You had said previously that you like characters that it's kind of hard to figure out who they are. Can you think of any that you would just love to play, or that it's just so wonderful to watch them, male or female? And same for you, Matthew.
Michael Corleone for me is the one I can never figure out from The Godfather. He's the ultimate character his motivations are really complex. And I actually just watched this at Vidiots, which is this, I just went to see a screening of The Godfather there last night, I think it was. And I've seen that movie, I can quote almost the whole thing. I still don't 100% understand Michael's motivation, and not in a bad way. Not like, oh, that doesn't make sense, but more like, wow, you see, in the beginning he did that, then he did this, then And so he, for me, is a character that I'm always just like, wow. There's a moment where he goes, and Kay, his wife, who he's left behind, he went to Italy and he had this affair. He got married to another young woman. He goes back and he convinces her that he needs her and he loves her, and he puts her in this car. And it's just like, why are you doing this, Michael? You don't need this. Anyway, it's so fascinating. And anyway, so we could get into why he doesn't. The great thing is, as I've grown older and I've got to understand human beings a little bit more, like you were saying, my interpretation of The Godfather has changed through time. So now I'm like, yes, in The Godfather Part 2, he's left alone at the table when the whole family goes and greets his father, and he's feeling this like shame, and he's alone, and therefore in the story he's like, I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't seen it. But anyway, my understanding of The Godfather and Michael's motivation changes because I think he's a really complex character. So anyway.
For me, there's so many characters that are interesting and alluring to play, but I think I was particularly tickled. There are two performances that are somewhat parallel. One is Meryl Streep's in The Devil Wears Prada, more of a commercial movie, but I really enjoyed that dynamic and the way that she didn't have to raise her voice. She was just so empowered in her stillness. And a similar role is Patricia Arquette in Severance, if you haven't seen it yet. Ben Stiller's series that he directed. And she in that, she's so compelling. And And I think it's honestly the feminist in me coming more and more alive the older I get, and especially interestingly since I've moved to LA 10 years ago. It's been a journey, but I feel like I just love powerful women, and they don't have to be mean or domineering necessarily. Perhaps those two characters are not the best examples in terms of being.
But they have it quietly.
They have it quietly. They are. The one in particular is a bit more malicious, but I think it's just exactly that quiet confidence that I just love, and I think I also look forward to playing those roles because I might play them when I'm a little older. I think I've done the love interests and the kind of forlorn, broken-hearted, younger type of character, and it's just exciting to move through life, all the different phases and what the different ages bring.